All right, let's do this. Okay, so this is a little bit of housekeeping. Since I'm going solo, all I can do is go through everything, narrate what I see. But if you guys are asking me questions, honestly, it's easiest if I check every, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes for questions, but I'm gonna go straight to the super chat questions because obviously you guys are patient, you waited, so I'll answer those first. And if I see something interesting while I'm here, boom. But we're gonna go through various tests and all these things right now. A couple of things, we're going to go over my current firmware for all of them so you guys know where we're at, and the settings so we know what settings we're using. I'll only be doing HDR, so no SDR stuff. You guys know that for me HDR is what I normally watch, and so I don't want to spend too much time on SDR. So we'll have just two picture profiles, two picture modes. One is the best and most accurate HDR, which would be filmmaker, or vivid/dynamic sports mode, the best sports mode for all of them, because we will go over sports brightness, see how that looks, just those two modes, and you guys will see the settings for each one. I've played with it for the last day or so. I've had this TV for maybe 24 hours, right? So this, and it's very similar to the S95C. So, you know, the navigation is pretty good. I do like the new UI. It's not that much different on the new Tizen, but what I've noticed is on Tizen, this is why I like Tizen, less clicks to get to the settings I want. Whereas on the Sony and the LG, maybe 1 or 2 extra clicks. So to me, that's like, usability, they could do better with less clicks. Okay. Oh, and this is a good question. I spoke to Class C. We will have specific scenes and ramps to check black crushing. So we'll see whether it's a panel lottery, whether Classy lost the panel lottery, I lost the panel lottery, or I won the panel lottery, and we'll have a discussion about that when we get there. Thanks for bringing it up, SD. All right, so uniformity, you know, big deal, right? So let's go through the first thing, which is, let's do this right here. All right, firmware and settings. So we'll start with the S95C. So I'll be out of the picture real quick as I go over the various TVs. Let me see. We'll start with S90C since that's what y'all are here for. All right. Picture mode will be in filmmaker mode. And just so you see, for all I know, maybe they updated the software. I'm at version 1059. Let's see if there's anything new since last night. Who knows? You never know. Maybe they're going, hey, FOMO's doing a review. Yep, latest version, all good. Okay, so now, filmmaker mode, brightness 50, contrast, it was default at 45 when I got it out of the box. So I'll leave it at default because many people have it default. They just go to filmmaker mode, so I won't play with that. Let's see, everything else is off, picture clarity off, contrast enhancer off, warm 2, that's the most color accurate. Temperature, color booster is off, peak brightness is on high for SDR, and I left shadow detail at 0. We will play with this when we look, if we see that maybe there's a bit of crushing or not, we'll play with shadow detail and see what happens to the image. Now remember, this is out of the box, it's got less than 100 hours on it, and it is not calibrated. On the other hand, this beautiful 77-inch TV is calibrated. So let's check those settings. Make sure I have the latest update. My current software version is 1310. Let's see if there's anything out there. Yeah, it's a bit overexposed. So I'm on the latest version. Actually, you know what? Let me make it easier for you guys to read. There you go, that's a little bit better. And we'll go to settings, filmmaker mode, brightness 50, contrast 50. This is all being calibrated, so I'm going to leave the settings as they are. And shadow detail 0. Now, I'll do 1 because this gives me the most accurate shadow detail for the S95C. We'll see how the S90D compares to the S95C. And the Sony, I just updated the Sony yesterday. Hopefully there's not a new one since yesterday. So here's the Sony, right? Professional mode, of course, and picture settings, brightness, Max 90 contrast, black level 50, that's default. Peak luminance is on high. Color is on expert 1, and I played with this. Thank you, Classy. He came by, well, he didn't come by here, but he gave me a call and gave me more accurate settings, and so the Sony looks pretty good. Actually, very similar to the calibrated G3. Now, the A95L is not calibrated, but the G3 is. However, they are so similar that most people will not notice the difference. So let's go to the G3 real quick. All right, filmmaker mode. And this morning, it just updated the firmware. So advanced settings. And again, the G3 is calibrated. So max brightness, everything else is off. Dynamic tone mapping, dynamic contrast is off. Peak brightness will be on for HDR. So I'll just put that on now before I forget. Okay. And it's SDR, that's why it shows peak brightness at low or off. Okay. All right. So let's put this 15% window so you guys can see what uniformity looks like. This is the uniformity. I'm going to turn up the exposure so you'll see. We'll play with the exposure throughout this video, right? So this is on maximum exposure for my camera. And as you can see, if it's overexposed, not much to see there. But as you take the exposure down, you'll probably see a little bit of that dirty screen effect, right? And so this is the complaint with the OLED. It is a panel lottery. Some people will get cleaner than others. Relatively speaking, mine is clean. So yeah, I know, is that terrible? All right, so let's take it out of there. I think we are good to go to the next topic here. Okay. Oh, yes, shadow detail or crushing. Before we jump into that, let's see what questions you guys got here. If not, oh yeah, great reminder. Thank you, Getty. Smash that like and subscribe if you haven't, folks. Support for our boy FOMO. I am here working hard, and it may be a few hours that I'm here with you guys, so we're going to have a fun Sunday. And where did I get the S90D? Bought it at Best Buy. I picked it up. I live near a distribution center in Southern California. There's actually 2 of them near me, one in Compton, one in Ontario. So I just choose the one that's available. So if you go to Best Buy and you're in Southern California and you see S90D, if you click pick it up, you have a distribution center near you. You can go there, drive there, and pick it up now. They will. If I chose shipping, I would not have received it until later this week, so I wanted to get right away, so I went there and picked it up 2 days ago. So here we are. Yeah, great question. And as you can see, now that we are here in normal content, you can't see the dirty screen effect, right? And this is something that Brian mentioned that I think is important, Brian S. And not to be confused with my co-host. Brian, none of the screens looked bad to me, just slightly different tones of gray. And that's the thing. The dirty screen isn't terrible, right? It's actually pretty good for a OLED. Thanks for that. Okay, so now we're going to look at shadow details or crushing. And with that, we'll go to this pattern. Up here is under advanced video. Yes, it is. So if you guys have the Spears and Munsell, I'm going to have fun with this ramp right here. We'll do steps so you guys can see clearly whether there's black crushing, right? So this is the pattern, and you go from deep black on one end to super bright on the other. So we're going to look at the lower blacks on the bottom. Let me put on my gloves here, if I can find it. Am I out of gloves? I don't want to touch my screen. How ironic. The one time I need my gloves, like, where the heck is my gloves? I have so many now. Oh, wait, it's over here. I found it. It's on the ground. It's like, it's so terrible. The irony. I have opened another bag here. And yes, we'll be time-stamping this later for you guys. So that way we can do this. Here we go. Here's my gloves. Look. It's even got a logo on it. Okay, so we'll be looking at this area over here, right? The darkest areas, and compare where, if any, there's black crushing, and relatively speaking. So the S95C and the G3 are calibrated. The Sony is not, and the S90C is not. So if I turn up the exposure, hyper-expose this, all right, boom. So what you see is the S90C and the S95C are nearly identical with the G3 and the Sony. So right here, the black levels, these black levels, even by eye, I can tell there's no crushing if I'm just using the pattern, right? So relatively speaking, the Sony is slightly, I would need a meter, but the Sony is slightly more, I don't want to say lifted because it is, well, maybe it is lifted, right? Because it is not calibrated, but I think it's so close that I'd say all four TVs are indistinguishable unless you put it side by side. They're that close. So my S90C, at least on this pattern, does not appear to be crushing, but we'll try different colors. That's white. Oh, what happens if we go to red? Red looks good, right? If you look at S95C, which is calibrated, and I had a pretty good panel, and the S90C, very similar, and as well as the G3 and the Sony, red looks good. Green looks pretty good. Blue, that's very clear. So there may be a touch on the S90D, might be, if you look at that one step, just above black and blue. It's a little bit darker than the S95C, but very similar to the Sony and similar to the G3. So that's something to think about. I mean, if you can call that crushing, sure, but this is like hyper exposed. But yes, arguably speaking, the S90D slightly darker right here, right? So here on the S95C is a bit more visible than right here on the S90D. So if you take that one step up, yeah, it's slightly crushed. I mean, I wouldn't return it based on that. And again, this is hyper exposed, so you guys can see the crushing. This is cyan. That looks pretty good there. Magenta, everyone loves magenta. S90 is very close. I'm not to complain. And yellow's great too. Again, yellow, maybe a touch, not bad. This is not something that I would return it for. If you compare the G3 in the yellow and the Sony and G3 and Samsung are very similar, and the S90D might be a touch darker than it should be. So we can see on the yellow that it's a touch, I don't want to say crush, but yes, it's a little bit lower than it should be. Okay, so that was kind of like the crushing test. Let me take the exposure back down. And I'll check for your questions right now. See what you guys got. I know, right? I'm rushing through the stuff that's boring so we can get to real content, but I know you guys want to ask, so. Oh, wait. I don't think FOMO is in the correct mode for dynamic range. What mode should I be in, friends? You need to go to the dynamic range low pattern to make sure it's in HDR. Alrighty, so let's do that. Would that be analysis? You want luminous sweeps? Classy, specifically? This one? Or is it in video setup? Color space, baseline, optical comparator? I want to make sure I get the one that advanced video panel. Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. Advanced panel. Let's see. Dynamic contrast. Advanced panel signal. Okay, here I am. Let's see. Would it be dynamic contrast? There we go. Okay, let's blow that thing up. Okay. Why are the G4 and C4 not in this comparison? Because I haven't received it yet. I should be getting the G4 next week, so I will replace the G3 with the G4. But you guys got to know, is the G3 good enough, right? Because the 2023 TVs are on huge discount. We are talking about the S89C, S90C, S95C, A95L. Well, Sony doesn't discount it that much because it's a carryover, but the G3 is definitely discounted. The question for you, John, is would you rather get a discounted G3 if it's identical to the G4? And that's what we're trying to look at, is how good is the G3 and the S90D is a 2024 model. It's $1,000 more than the S90C, but is it $1,000 better? Because if it's a match for the S95C, and not any better, you know, don't pay that extra $1,000 for the S90D, right, John? So we always have to compare to last year's TV. As the 2024 TVs come in and the 2023s are cleared out, we'll start doing more all 2024 TV comparisons. Thanks, John. But since it's so early, people are definitely wanting to compare with that. All right. So go to the low range uniformity on the previous screen. So I'm at Starfield viewing angle, low range, large area uniformity is 0%. Is that it? That's like low range, 0%. Is that what you guys looking at? Like, what patterns are this? Okay, look. This is so fun. You guys are like, okay, so I'm on top. So I'm on the patterns on top. And on top, we have panel. Is that the right tab? Let's start with that. You guys are killing me. So panel, right? That is correct, right? Panel. Evaluation, and dynamic range low. Okay. There we go. All right, nailed it. Thank you. We are at dynamic range low. I definitely need to, all right, let me turn up, make sure I have my, okay. So I've turned up my exposure. And here we are, dynamic range low. Let me close my curtains real quick. The G3 definitely has a bit more, well, my G3 has more black crushing than my S90D, but let me look up close. So, on the Sony, I can see it flashing up to 65. On the G3, it stops at 68, so there's a bit of crushing from 67, 66, and 65. And here, it goes down to 66 and 65. 65 is a hard one to see, but definitely it goes down to 66. On the S95, yes, 65 is definitely more clear. So, the S95C goes down to 65 solid. There is no doubt it goes down to 65. On the S90, it goes to 66. 65, you could barely see it, so you can say that the 65 and 66 are not as bright as on the S95C. And on the Sony, 66 and 65 are very similar. As a matter of fact, I'd say 67 was when you start to see it differentiate. So you could even say the Sony is slightly crushed at 66 and 65 on this pattern. And on the G3, it's crushed up to maybe 67. So Sony is only 1 point better than the G3. Samsung S95C is the best, but the S90C would be number 2. It goes down to 66, but not quite 65. So hopefully, and this is out of the box, right? You guys saw I didn't play with the S90C. Does that answer your question? In HDR, are you still in FMM? You know what? Let's see. Let's see the settings here now. I don't know. Let me see. So I'm in filmmaker mode on the S95C. And SDR. So it looks like the static, if the static tone mapping is off, it appears to be SDR. But it is filmmaker mode. The S90D is also filmmaker mode. Yep. The peak brightness is on high though. So I don't know. Is that am I on SDR then? Because the static is not. I cannot toggle. That is true. Let me drop shadow detail by 1 point. Thank you, SD, for that reminder. Oop, wrong one. See, this is why it takes a village, my friends. Good reminder. So let's do that. Let's take it off. Let's take it down 1. Oop. Oh. I am in shock you guys could see that, by the way. So here we go. I'm so excited. I forgot to change exposure so you guys could see. All right, so S95C again. So we're in filmmaker mode. Brightness, contrast, all at 50. And we'll go down. Shadow detail. Oh, darn it. There we go. Shadow detail. Down, 0. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, let's take a close look one more time. Yep, taking it down 1, that did it. They're identical. S90D and S90C now look the same. Thank you, SD. Man, I gotta give you a big win right there. Okay. Also, high peak luminance for SDR. Wouldn't that affect the EOTF? Would it? I have it on all of them a high luminance. I mean, I guess I could take it down. Would that make a difference? I don't know. I'm going to have to let the pros chime in. I don't calibrate, my friends. I only watch in HDR, so. But I suspect if I took it the luminance down, they would all be crushed, right? So at least that kind of gives it a even playing field. You know, I don't even know where the other disc is, Classy. Maybe I have the wrong disc. If the gamma is 1886, it's SDR. So let's see what the gamma is. I'm running around, and unfortunately, oh, there you go. So this is SDR. HDR disc, I cannot find it then. I misplaced my HDR disc. As far as these test patterns are then, if this is SDR, then so be it. It is SDR. So, but our content, movie content, and our Spears and Munsell are HDR. So we'll have to extrapolate based on real content. Hopefully, that'll be close enough. Okay, let's turn up that. Oh my goodness. Let me take my exposure back. The other way. Okay. I think we're done with this. I don't want to spend too much time on this pattern because you guys want content, right? Well, since we're here, let's do skin tones real quick. But I'm going to check your questions before we move on to skin tones. Yeah, so why can't you see it? It's because it's so dark. Even with my hyper high exposure, near black, it's just way too dark. And when I turn up the exposure that much, there's too much noise. This is why I have to get a more expensive camera. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're looking at low noise, darkness, we're talking, I need to get a red Raptor X, where I can add an extra 6 points of dynamic range, 6 stops of dynamic range, go up to 20, right? So at some point, I'll probably have to get that. But for now, I'll just have to deal with what's available. Good point, and I'm on that. Hey, high def. Okay, so let's move on to skin tones real quick. Again, out of the box, S90D, not calibrated, but the other two of them are S95C, G3 are calibrated, and the Sony A95L is not calibrated. So, just going through the images real quick, they actually all look pretty good. Nothing stands out as, oh, the colors are off. I mean, to my eyes, look great. I'm hoping you're seeing what I see, which is the skin tones are definitely acceptable. Here we go. This is a great one because this model, she has very multiple colors in her skin tone, right? It's a light tan, and within that, if anything is off, you'll see the differences right away. And it's crazy that the Sony and the S90C look so similar to the calibrated G3 and S95C. So as far as I'm concerned, this one looks pretty good. So this is a good question, Lisa. I'm going to hit this one. Which primary color could a TV be without and would bother you the least? So first of all, it's not green. If green is off, too much green and all these skin tones destroyed. Red could be a little bit off and it'll just be warm if it's oversaturated, and that actually is acceptable to many people. And that's why Sony sometimes pushes a little bit warm, because that's an error they prefer to have. Not to say I'll have it. Oh, you know what? This is wrong. I can get to skin tones. So there we go. How did I lose my, what? No, what is this? There we go. Like, what happened? Okay, I had the wrong label, out of the box skin tones. Okay, so here we are, skin tones. I'm thinking, what was, that was not firmware setting. Now, as you can see, the S90C is slightly, well, it's dimming a little bit. So you see her face is getting darker, right? It looks the same here, but because my camera is sensitive to light, it looks a little darker because it is, the S90D is dimming just a bit. So let's get out of here. But at the start of the skin tone test, they all look the same. Let's go to Yoko real quick and see if that allows it to get bright. There we go, much brighter. Yes, S95C definitely looks good, Masa. Let me move your comment down here so it's easy to read. Okay, yes, I agree. Yes, Samsung does not want the S90D to compete with last year's S95C or S90C, but it's so close that, like, perceptually, the white is brighter, but the skin tones and the faces, it's not so bad. But yes, I can see it slightly dimmer. If I took out a meter, I could probably tell. But just by eye, if it wasn't next to the other three TVs, I would not be able to say, oh, it's definitely dimmer. But because they're side by side, yeah, you see it. Okay, so I think we're done with skin tones. Let's move on to Who wants to do sports? So let's get sports in. I have just the thing for you guys. So what we're going to do is this. In sports mode, what I have is I have hockey playing in slow-mo. Hopefully, I don't get a YouTube copyright censorship strike and takes this offline. So we'll see. But I think it's important to let the hockey run for a bit so you guys can see what TVs dim over time. We are going to change the TVs to vivid / sports dynamic, whatever I think is the best for sports on all 4 TVs. Blast it, because in a bright room, you guys will be either in dynamic for Samsung TVs or vivid on the G3 or vivid on the Sony. And, you know, part of this is, can they hold on to that brightness? I don't care so much about picture accuracy in terms of color. I want to know if they can hold on to that brightness and how long. And we're going to talk, and I'll answer your questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes. But this is important because it's one thing when they hit the brightness for 2 minutes and then the review is over, but then you watch it and 10 minutes later, it's all dim, right? So what we're going to do now is switch over to hockey real quick. So get your questions ready and I'll address them. So I'm going to move over to YouTube. Trusty YouTube. See what happens. Oh, wait, before I do that, let me change the settings so that we start at the same picture modes here. Standard, vivid. Ah, look at that. There we go. Vivid on the G3. Everything is maxed out for brightness. On the S95C, and this is what I'm talking about. It's so easy to change it on the Samsung. Just click, click, and you're there. On the new one, I have to have one extra click. Ooh, Eco, yeah, how terrible is Eco? Dynamic, okay, there we go. Now, they're all in their brightest modes. Let's switch over to sports. So this is on YouTube. All right, and let me adjust. Perfect. So as you can see, and this is why I recommend the G3 for sports. The G3 is the brightest TV here. However, the S90D is right there, but okay, it's not as bright as the Sony or the S95C. That's just straight up, right? The minute we switched the source, this is probably as bright as it's going to get. The question is, can the Sony hold on to its brightness? Because it starts off pretty strong. Can the S95C hold on to its brightness? And will the S90D get even dimmer? So let me see what questions you guys have. Why no reviews on the S95D? Because I decided to get the S90D first. I had to choose one, right? And the S90D was available, so I wanted to get that one. The S90C was my editor's choice last year. I just wanted to see if the value is still there for the S90D. And right now, I can tell you, get the S89C, please. At the 77-inch size, it performs identically to the S95C. And it's like $1,800, $1,900 on sale at Best Buy, and that's why I put the link. The S89C right here, I mean, just looking at this, there is no reason to pay $1,000 more for the S90D when the S90C or the S89C are available. So as you can see, the S90D is starting to dim a little bit more than when it started. It looks to me, right? Relatively speaking, it does. It's only been what? 3 minutes? 2 minutes? So let's see if it gets any dimmer. We're going to stay on this for another 5 minutes, right? I don't want to spend too much time. Who knows how patient YouTube can get? Maybe I could go even slower because I'm on slow mode. And of course, brand name, right? Notre Dame, just my luck. All right, so let's see. It's the Notre Dame channel. I love it. They're gonna hit me. I'm at 0.25 speed. I can't get any lower. Maybe I should go faster, right? Maybe that'll help. Let's go 1.75. And high def, I thought of you. That's why I chose this game. All right. Okay, all right, you know what? I think there's enough of this. We'll do that just for you, my friend. Let me pause this and I will change it to, I guess there are people who would love to watch hockey in filmmaker mode. So, you know, we're taking requests. So, Sony in the professional mode, and their brightness is maxed out. Standard, eco, movie, filmmaker, okay. All right, I think, let's double check the brightness is maxed out here. Yep, peak brightness is on high. On the Sony, max brightness, yep. And Samsung is always on max brightness, shouldn't be an issue. So, let's do it. Let me turn up the exposure. Of course, we'd have a commercial. Okay, so, per request, all 4 TVs are in filmmaker, the most accurate mode, as you watch Cats. How long is this tomorrow? Am I going to get hit with a commercial? I hope not. Okay, so as soon as this is up, I'm going to have to skip in 14 seconds. But you guys get to see the processing on YouTube, right? And they all look pretty good on YouTube, actually. It's not too bad. And 4, 3, 2, 1. Skip. Okay, here we are. So this is filmmaker mode, and they're all very similar. And so far, right, I'm going to turn down exposure just a little so you guys could be more sensitive when one of them actually dims. Okay, let's see what questions you guys got. So we are in filmmaker mode again, if you guys just joined us. Yes, I do love doing comparisons with sports because I too watch football, basketball, you name it. And it does annoy me when I watch college football and it dims over time in dynamic mode or standard mode. So, but this is filmmaker mode. And if you really, really care about brightness, really the G3 nails it. And I suspect the G4 will do the same. And let's see here, the 55-inch S90C is sold out. I wonder why. It's a great deal. Guys, if you guys are considering the S90D, just get the S90C. The S90C looks like it's very similar. I mean, forget third gen panel or not. They're going to use software to hold back the S90D so that it cannot outperform the S95D or the S95C. It looks like they're not going to push it. So even if this is a third gen panel, it wouldn't surprise me if it's being held back. And your point about black crushing sounds like a panel lottery. Now, in the SDR test that I had, the pattern, it's identical to the S95C, but we'll test it in real HDR content to see how it works. And we do have 2 challenging HDR dark scene contents. 1917, the stairs, right, crawling up the stairs, as well as Dune during that invasion scene where it's really dark and there's a lot of detail and action. The question is, can we see that? So we'll test it out and see if it's panel lottery or not. But, you know, let's address that. Well, we'll address that when we get there. But there's a big issue, which is if it turns out that they sent a firmware to fix it, well, my TV is fine. What's going to happen to my TV, right? Will my blacks and your black be suddenly lifted? The answer is absolutely. If it's a universal global firmware fix, it's going to affect my TV as well. So it feels like it's a QC issue, not necessarily a firmware issue. But if they fix it in firmware, well, the question then is, how many of these TVs are too dark and how many are fine, like mine? If most TVs are too dark, then the majority wins, and then now the minority who won the panel lottery lost the firmware lottery, right? So those of you who won the panel lottery, this is why you unplug and do not update your TV. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a nightmare, but we'll talk about it once the HDR scenes come out, because who knows, maybe my HDR is going to be terrible as well. And if it is, then I too will look forward to a firmware update. When will I get my hands on the G4? Next week, I believe. I spoke to Robert. He said it's shipping like anytime now. It's actually en route, so anytime next week. But unfortunately, next weekend I'm on vacation, so I cannot do it this next weekend. I'm hoping to get this out before I go on vacation. I'll be out in Cancun enjoying myself. So if it's not going to be this week, it'll be the following week. But yes, good question. And it looks fine. So if you guys watch sports in filmmaker mode, as you can see, the filmmaker mode simply is dim enough that the S90D has not dimmed at all over time. Let's grab some super chats here. Hey, Buddy Love, thank you for joining us. TV Panel 101 at Stop the FOMO University. Love it. Thank you. Hey, and thank you guys. I mean, between SD and Classy, you guys kind of help walk me through this, because it's like, oh, you're under pressure, and you forget where everything is. Like, where did my HDR test disc go, right? So I have to call, if I don't find it, I have to call Stacy Spears and say, hey, can you send me another one? The HDR test disc is gone. So yes, I love doing this. You guys know that. And oh, Sean, hey. Hi, FOMO. Hope you're fine. I am. S95C, after upgrades, S95C is calibrated to the most recent firmware, and it looks great. It is an amazing TV. I do like it a lot. Looks on par with Sony? It is, absolutely. If anything, if you don't, the XR Clear, we're going to see real content. You're going to notice XR Clear might have the highlights pop a little bit more in movies, but it's very subtle. Let's see. It's also bigger size here, which is benefiting. Yes, and this is for many people wondering, should I get a 65 or a 77? So the 77-inch S95C, right below it is 65, and right next to it, everything else is 65. The question is, you want to pay an extra $800 for the 77? I really do enjoy the 77, especially from 6 to 7 feet away. Very immersive. 65-inch for me is too small, even at 7 feet away. I know a lot of you are thinking, what, 7 feet, 65-inch? It feels like I'm watching a TV from the 80s now. I mean, I know I'm spoiled, but if you're sitting 6 to 7 feet, really try the 77-inch. It's just perfect, right? It's not even, it's barely immersive enough, but it's perfect, I'd say. Thank you for that super chat, John. All right, let's see what we got here. S90D has been neutered. Very disappointing. We're only a firmware away from having it unleashed, right? So I think this is enough for us to prove that if you guys are watching in filmmaker mode or movie mode, it's not going to dim over time. So I think that's been proven right now. And let's swap over to the next big thing for you guys. Let's see, what am I going to do here? Let's do HDR Spears and Munsell. Yes, sounds like a plan. Steve, on my iPhone, the S90 seems to have dimmed so much. In the hockey match, it's hard to see. So if you missed it, we've got to wait for all the TVs to identify the news source. I apologize. I just switched to filmmaker mode. So if you go to the beginning when I did have them all in vivid mode, they're all fairly bright. But yeah, the S90D, although started off brighter, it then went a bit dimmer, and it was the least bright after 5-10 minutes, and then went to filmmaker mode, and they're all a little bit dimmer in filmmaker mode. So yeah, but at the end of the day, if you need a bright TV, get the G3 on discount for sure. or a bright OLED. The X90L is just as bright, so if you just need a bright TV, just get the Sony X90L. Okay, if you just joined, these are the TVs that are calibrated while I wait for it to match up, and it may not. I might have to restart all the TVs. The S95C is calibrated, the G3 is calibrated, the A95L is not, and it's a demonstration of how good Sony is out of the box, but that's a panel lottery. Not all Sonys look awesome out of the box. Some of them do need a little touch-up. Mine did get a touch-up. I got a few settings from Classy to help it out, and it looks phenomenal now. The S90D out of the box, no changes at all, nothing, right? And it looks really close. So definitely a panel lottery. I feel I've won it. I got it at Best Buy, so it's not like I got a golden product from Samsung directly. I just picked it up at Best Buy a couple of days ago. So yes, S95C, G3 calibrated. Sony has just settings optimized, and the S90D untouched, just out of the box in filmmaker mode or whatever modes I use. All right, I'm going to try to reset these TVs real quick. Restart them. Maybe they will catch. Sometimes you just have to turn it off. All right, let's try this again. Okay, let's see what happens. And we're on. Hopefully. Troubleshooting in the middle of a stream. Yes, what I love to do. And I got a reminder from KG to make sure I have logo dimming off on the S90D. Does that mean I have to do sports again if I don't have logo dimming off? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Let's check real quick while the TVs are hunting it. Okay. Brightness optimization is off, motion lighting off, off. Ugh. Hey, guess what? We get to do sports again. Oh, all right. I need to be fair to the S90D. Thank you for that, KG. I tell you. All right. Okay. I am sure hockey is still playing. I don't want to rob the S90D of an opportunity to impress. Okay, we're gonna do this again. I just cannot leave it. Okay, sports, dimming. So let's see if the S90D is gonna dim over time. Oh. All right, let's do this. Yes, S90D 55 and 65 inch is confirmed. So real quick, as you can see at the start of the game, it is as bright as the other TVs. For some reason, the G3 didn't look as bright as it did before. So let me double check that it's still held. See, it went back to filmmaker. There we go, vivid. All right, that's the G3 I know and love. Okay, so they're all in their brightest setting. And again, this is not just to see how bright it gets, but it's to see which TV dims most aggressively over time. So the S90D officially has dimming off. Thank you for that, KG. He texted me and says, dude, well, this wizard is not perfect, but thank you for that, JW. I figure, you know what, why record it and put it out, and then talk to you guys when I can do it live, and you guys can make your corrections right now. And make your requests, too, if I have it right. If I'm able to do it, I will do it. Get ready for the cat commercial? Yeah, pretty much. It looks like the LG has better motion. Well, maybe. Let's see, I'll tell you. Because YouTube compression being what it is. Let me see. They all have max motion interpolation. They're all pretty close. I wouldn't choose it because of motion alone. The other three TVs don't have terrible motion. I don't see any artifacts. But then I would have special content for that. Let me look at the puck. In high speed mode, no less. I think the S90D is not dimming aggressively at all, actually, with the logo off. Yeah, I think the S90D motion looks fine. I wouldn't exchange it because of the motion, that's for sure. I'm sure if we put a special sensor / meter on it, you guys notice differences, but to the human eye, I think it's fine. I'm looking at the puck, and there's no artifacts around the puck. The puck looks very clean on all the TVs, and yeah, no complaints. Now you guys notice the S90D, if it's dimming a bit more, it's a little bit less aggressive, right? Again, not as bright as the G3, but very similar to the S95C. And the Sony, surprisingly, is not aggressively dimming. Maybe it's the new firmware update. No problem. Live testing and streaming is hard. Hope everyone in chat understands this too. I hope they do. I'm sure you'll remind them, Tech. I call you Tech because I see your name is Tech with KG. So if you just joined me, I had to redo the sports dimming again because I did have the static logo dimming on low, and I completely forgot to take it off. But now it looks fine. And it does, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it's dimmed at all. However, it is not as bright as the other three TVs. So the S90D is definitely being held back in software at the 65-inch size. Now, at the 77-inch, the S89C and the S90C was identical to the 95C. And that's why I'm telling you guys to get that. But at the 65-inch S90D, it looks like it's very similar maybe to the S90C. Might as well get the S90C. But it's also panel lottery. You might win it and get it real bright. Hey, Sean, thank you for the super chat. I feel the way Sony comes so late in the year with the new qd-oled TVs, others are ready with their new ones in January. But it seems Sony previous year is equal, if not better than them. So maybe Sony is 1 year ahead in quality. So it feels like they're always half a model year ahead, right? So like this year, we have the new mini LED, that new flagship, that prototype nicknamed XR90 is what the leak is are saying. When is it coming out? Now, honestly, I don't know yet. So I'm sure they'll let us know shortly. If it's as late as it was last year, end of summer, let's say, yeah, that's quite disappointing. Then I would have to delay the shootout until the end of summer when we can get it. My hope is it gets in earlier, but we really won't know. Hopefully, Sony will announce launch dates in the next month or two. And as soon as I know, I will share with you guys for sure. But Sony definitely is a worthy TV. Their flagships are good. Last year, even their non-flagship X90L was excellent. This year, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the new mid-tier that takes over for the X90L for sure. Thanks for the super chat, Sean. Super chat, Sean. I was going to say the super Sean chat. All right, so now we can, I think we can safely say after a few minutes that the S90D preserved its brightness, but it didn't start off too bright. Oh, well, it is bright, but not as bright as the other flagship TVs. So it is the 65-inch size, possibly the 77-inch S90D. Well, first of all, I don't even know if there's a 77-inch S90D, to be honest with you. They've only launched the 55 and the 65. There's a lot of question out there whether there will be a 77 S90D. We'll see. I will ask Samsung this weekend and see what they say. But for sure, the 55 and 65 have launched. 77, who knows, right? But the 89C, 77-inch from last year, you guys, if you're in the market for that, oh yeah, this orange, that orange on the 90D, even from here I can tell, it's touch dimmer. So, all right, now we can move on. Let's go to movies. Or rather, Spears and Muscle, right? That will be the next one. Hopefully, my Panasonic connects this time. Let's pause it here. Boom. All right. Come on, lucky 7. Let's connect, please. Otherwise, we'll have to go to Kaleidoscape. Yes, it's reading. All right, good news. Okay, we're gonna do some 2,000. Well, we'll do 10,000 nit content so you guys can see how tone mapping is. But the reality is, I don't expect much from tone mapping. Demonstration material. All right, so we'll do a quick run through, and I'll pause in certain areas and we'll look at black crushing and HDR. This is HDR, we're at 10,000 nits, and as we go through it, where I think is interesting, I will pause. So right here is relative brightness, right? And it does feel like the other 3 TVs are a touch brighter in the speak. Oh, of course, I'm in vivid mode, duh. Let's go back to filmmaker mode. I'm all excited. Wow, that's really bright. It's amazing. Oh, it's dynamic mode. But I can see why you guys enjoy watching in dynamic mode. I was tempted to go, wow, this is crazy awesome, right? Oh, the disappointment of it all. All right, those two are in filmmaker. Sony will be in its wonderful professional mode. There we go. And LG in filmmaker. And I gotta make sure it doesn't have any of those options on. Let's just double check the settings real quick for all of them so you guys know what settings we're on. Okay. So 100, all dynamic contrast is off, tone mapping off, expression enhancer off, peak brightness high. Okay. And on the Sony, max brightness. Let's make sure we're in gradation preferred. Yes, we are. Everything else is off. Peak luminance is on high. On the S95C, all good. HDR tone mapping is on static. All right, peak brightness is high. On the S90D, brightness, contrast, all 50, static tone mapping, peak brightness on high, color booster off. Okay, now we're all in their most accurate modes. Okay, before we start, let me catch your questions real quick. Actually, we can. There we go. Put a little slow-mo for you guys. Steve Cass says, according to ratings, the new Sony for 2024 will be their new mini LED black light TVs. I don't know what black light is, but it definitely will be their flagship. Due to some minor bugs, once corrected, announcement launch will be announced. Well, the question is, the A95L, right? It launched with lots of bugs, and they're still fixing Dolby Vision. So, as a reminder, if you just joined us, we are at 10,000 nits. So tone mapping at 10,000 nits is unrealistic. There is no content at 10,000 nits. So if you see issues with tone mapping, we're going to go down to 2,000 nit content, which I think is more realistic. I just want to see at its limit what the TVs can do. Okay? So. And so far, they all look very similar. Like right here is interesting. The tone mapping on the Sony is a little bit clipped. Hard to see. Just a touch. Right here in the top right-hand corner. Put on my magic gloves here. So the detail in the clouds here is not as much detail as on the Samsung, on the two Samsungs, and even on the LG, and that's all tone mapping. So we all know that Sony does not tone map very well above 2,000 nits. And to be fair, good luck finding contents at 2,000 nits anytime soon. Everyone's favorite, white horses. And this is where you really see any loss of detail, right? If there's any. So count the blades of grass. So obviously the Sony has the least number of blades of grass. LG has a few more, arguably. And I think the S95C has more than the S90C. Oh, wow. I mean, maybe because it's bigger? It looks like it's better resolved than the S95C. G3 isn't bad, actually. But the S95C definitely has the most blades of grass in the scene. Let's see if you guys can see that. Yeah. That's basically what I see. But again, don't buy a TV on 10,000 nit content. I just wanted to push the limits of their ability to tone map. We'll go to some dark scenes so we can see some black crushing at 10,000 nits. This one looks pretty good. It's not dark enough though to test black crushing. We'll get to the swamp, and that's a great one for the black crushing near black. Yeah, right here you can see the Sony is like just just blew that out, right? Let me lower my exposure so you guys can see that. It's kind of funny. I can't even lower it enough. All right. Okay, well, going fast forward real quick here. Oh, here we go. We're getting closer to near blacks. Yeah, all the TVs really do well in specular highlights because they're OLED. And these are the scenes where if you're afraid of uniformity issues, it would pop up, right? Slightly mid light scenes. On the G3, it doesn't look bad. I cannot see the uniformity issues that you normally see in a gray. Flying forward, real quick. Yeah. There we go. This is a great one for any black crushing, if there is any. So let's turn up the exposure. And as you can see, on the S90D, very similar near black as the other three TVs. So this scene where you have blacks on the bottom, if there's crushing, this is where they struggle, right? So yeah, they're all very similar. So nothing here. So let me continue. Oh, this is another good one. Let me pause here. go. Look at that detail. So definitely my TV doesn't have black crushing. Its near black is nearly, if not identical, to the other three TVs, without a doubt. So let me catch a couple of super chats. Thank you so much, my friends. Hey, Sean. Frankly, for sports, people with good lit rooms, QD-OLED still has dimming issues. Yes, I cannot agree more. I think you have to go with W-OLED G3 MLA, and the G4 MLA I expect to be equally as good if you want OLED in a bright room. If not, fear and it will remain. Bring it on, FOMO, and unleash the beasts, Q900D and the other LEDs. Yes, I hope to get the 900D sometime this summer, right? And compare it to, well, what? The G4? I would have to compare it to the G4 because we know it would be brighter than normal OLEDs. Can it beat the G4 is the question. But remember this, Samsung did not mention brightness at all during CES. And you know Samsung, marketing machine. If it's special, they can't stop talking about it. No mention of brightness this year, but a lot of talk about AI processing and the AI neural network that they have. So my fear is they may have had a misstep in terms of predicting what the thing is for this year. The thing for this year is definitely brightness, no thanks to Sony. But Sony's 4000 nit announcement came after Samsung locked in their features and specs for 2024. So, oh, ouch. It's going to be a fun shootout this year for sure, though. Who knows? Maybe Samsung will unleash the brightness by the shootout. And thank you for another super chat, Sean. When Sony is having issues in Dolby Vision specifically, not a criticism, but looking at the comparisons now and others doing so well, especially the S95C. The question, how did Sony win last year? So in a shootout, we don't do Dolby Vision. We only do HDR10. So if it's only HDR10, then all the TVs are able to compete. Since the Samsung does not have Dolby Vision, it's not fair. And also we need a Dolby Vision reference monitor, which we don't have. Our reference monitor is just HDR10 reference, right? So Dolby Vision is something that you're going to have to take this. I mean, basically it would be Samsung HDR10 versus Dolby Vision, but which is the creator's intent? Like your reference that you're comparing, is that a Dolby Vision reference that they used or just a regular reference? So I don't think we're going to have, well, I leave it to Classy. I'm not going to answer that. So Classy, you're going to have to decide how we compare Dolby Vision. So here we are in a very dark scene. And I think, again, the S90D takes into account, as far as near black, it does as well as the other two. So I have no complaints on mine. It definitely looks like we are in a panel lottery issue. Lots of people who are complaining of black crushing, it looks like a panel lottery. And I hope that we don't have an update because, well, I hope we have an update that is selective. Oop, yeah, this is not good. Let me turn my exposure down so you guys can see the wonderful specular highlights. Here we go. So, specular highlights, this is 10,000 nits. All the TVs do well. Indistinguishable. I wouldn't be able to choose one over the other in terms of specular highlights. So these little highlights is what OLEDs do best. Let me turn down the exposure a bit more. See if I can get some more detail for you guys. Yeah, this specular highlight at 10,000, and this is not 10,000 nits, by the way. It's not that bright, but still, it's pretty good. Yeah, rich colors there. There we go. Oh, the moose looks like a moose. That's great. However, actually, you know what? There's nothing there. Okay, so this is what actually I was going to show you. This is important, and this is the difference between W-OLED and qd-oled. This is the scene that W-OLED struggles with. If you notice, there is color here, and on the W-OLED, it's too bright. It's mostly white. So this is why people get W-OLED, right? So this is pretty bright. This is bright, but all bleached out. There's no color here. The color is preserved in all the qd-OLEDs. So there are certain color spaces where if it's too bright, W-OLED simply cannot show it. And that's one example of that. Doesn't happen in every scene, but that's something to be aware of and why qd-oled is the more advanced technology. Oh, here's a great one for black crushing test. Let's see how we do. And I'm looking at the shadow on the far right-hand corner. If there's black crushing, you'd have that as mostly black. And I think the S90D, I could affirmatively say there's no black crushing. If anything, the G3 is a little bit darker. But all four does this scene very well. All right, let's take it back down. Okay, so enough of the 10,000. Let's go to 2,000, and you guys will notice. So we're going down to 2,000 in content here. And I know you guys don't watch Spears and Muscle for fun. We just use it as a challenge for all the TVs. I just wanted to show you guys how the Sony looks better with 2,000 nit horses, 2,000 nit content on the white horses scene. But you guys will not notice these differences in most content because they're almost all at 1,000 nits or less, which is all four TVs are capable of doing very well. Okay, let's stop right here. So remember the clouds kind of clipped out? So the Sony, it's all back. Let me turn down exposure a little bit. There we go. Wow, even then my exposure is not low enough. This thing is so bright. Okay, well, you have to take my word for it. It's all there. There's very little clipping. If anything, the G3, however, looks a little bit brighter, surprisingly. That's kind of cool. So the G3 really takes advantage of that brightness. This is 2,000 nits, in case you guys are wondering. All right, let's go find the horses. Ah, oops. Is this it? Almost. Ah, there they are. Okay, so the details are all there. Ooh, wait, no, wrong. Sony, you're breaking my heart. Look how many leaves there are and grass coming out. Maybe go down to 1,000 nit. I'll give you a chance here, Sony. Okay, at 1,000 nits, the grass is all there. I tell Sony all the time, you guys got to tone map bright content a little bit better. So yeah, so 1,000 nits, Sony's fine. Above 1,500, 2,000, maybe not so much, right? You can lose some brightness, but terrible, terrible. Okay, enough HDR, Spears and Muscle. I think you guys enjoy the horses enough. Let's go watch some real movie content here. All right. Okay. And you guys are hearing a fan? Indeed, I have a giant fan blowing in the back. The last thing I want is for the TVs to overheat and dim because of heat. Okay, here we are. This is my OLED comparisons. Let's run it. Let's do it. And we'll pause interesting areas. So the first one is alpha. this wonderful Oscar-winning movie. Almost, not quite. Okay, so this is super bright, right? This is sunrise and whatnot, and all 4 TVs actually do this very well. The S90D nails it here. Let's move on. Oops. Aquaman. Okay, so let's look at kind of like the whites and the skin tone on pause here. This is when if you have your white, if your white is off, let me turn up the exposure. If the white point's off a little bit, you're going to notice it here. There we go. And they all look spot on. 2 of them are calibrated. Reminder, S95C is calibrated, and the G3 is calibrated. Now, the G3 might look a little bit bluer because it's WOLED. WOLED, camera sensors being what they are, it's more sensitive to WOLED. So if it looks a little bit bluer, it's because more of my sensor eyeballing it, they look nearly indistinguishable. So the S90D out of the box, I'd say it's actually pretty good. And then we're going to go into skin tones in this next scene in Aquaman. There we go. Okay, so she has pale skin, as well. They both have pale skin. I'm going to turn up the exposure. So when it's off, if there's any green issues, oh, you're going to notice it in this one. Here we go. Okay. And that looked pretty good, right? So I like this because the red hair, the red lips, it's very saturated in this scene, but it's not so much, hey, I know what's accurate, but rather the differences, right? So all 4, I'd say, look pretty good because their skin tones, their lips, their hair looks very similar. So yay, S90D. Panel lottery, again, it's not to say you will get that same level of, whoops, we're going to repeat it one more time. You're not going to get, since it's panel lottery, everyone may have a different experience. I just happened to get a really good one, actually. Okay, so, right, here we go. All right, now specular highlights. Let's see, does one gold shimmer better than the other? They all look similarly bright, so in this scene, they all do well. No TV, so you wouldn't choose a TV. So when people say, oh, I want to get this because it's brighter, not bright. Aquaman is a bright movie, and yet G3, A95L, Samsung S95C, and S90C, nearly identical. Specular highlights are the same. So when you're watching movies, I normally tell people, get the cheaper equivalent performing TV than upgrading to the S95C if all you watch are just regular movies, because Spears and Muscle is one thing, but Aquaman, come on, right? They all look similar. Save money, get the S90C, right? So that's why I want to use real content for you guys. All right, let's go to the next one. Mad Max, we all love this. I'm going to try and pause here and there where I can, because this one's a good one. No, I don't want that one. Is this a good one to stop? Okay, I'll stop in this one. This is actually a very good one to stop. Okay, so I like this scene a lot, actually. If you look at the brightest part of that fire, and this, and you guys know, come on, this is fast action. You guys are not going to notice this, but I have to call it out just because if you're paying that much, you want to know why you're getting a qd-oled. So this is a bright scene right here on the LG. It's clipped, the colors are clipped. You have a little bit of yellow, but there's a lot of white. On the Sony, it's equally bright, but there's a lot of subtlety. Oranges, shades of orange, shades of red, and that little speck right there actually has a little bit of red in it. Here, there's less red, and Samsung nails it as well because it's qd-oled, not because it's Samsung or Sony. And that's the separation. So I think you can see it on YouTube, right? Not a big deal because look how fast this scene is going. I mean, are you really going to catch that? Right? I mean, it's like boom, boom, boom. Same thing, right? That bright yellow. There's a bit more yellow in the other two. And, yep, right here, right? There's a little bit more red. But again, it's like fast moving. You're enjoying the moment. You're not going to stop and go, look, guys, I got qd-oled. I have a little bit more red in my QD than the next guy, right? So this is such a good scene for that. So I'll let it run through this time without pausing. And tell me if you notice this difference. I mean, does it make a big deal that the LG G3 slightly doesn't have that yellow? And as far as the experience, right, it's phenomenal on all these TVs. Now, I did underexpose it a little bit so that you can see the detail, but I'm going to expose it to near what you're going to get when watching it. So let's see. It's going to play it again. There we go. Like, could you tell the difference between qd-oled and w-oled in full 24p? Nope. All look great. All right, next one. Now this one is the white scene where if you have dirty screen effect, it's going to show, right? So matrix, that white room. Let me pause here and get my exposure right. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you guys remembered how the G3 had slightly banding, vertical banding? You don't really see it here. So I took the exposure down, and if there's, now I do see a slight magenta tint, but that's a w-oled thing. Otherwise, it's pretty clean. So on the left-hand side, I see a slight magenta, but it's very slight, and I know what I'm looking for. The sensor on my camera does not pick up the magenta. So, but you can tell the w-oled, right, has that slight cooler look. That's just sensor sensitivity. So, looks pretty good. And they're holding the brightness, because this scene is a very bright scene, and none of the TVs are dimming as this scene plays. So, it's pretty good. Now, this is going to be the near black shadow detail we talked about. All right, let me pause here. Let me turn up the exposure. Okay, this scene. This is a dark scene, period. And I'll stop right there. Okay, so all four TVs are showing very similar shadow detail. And this is one part where I'm going to pause right there. Okay. It has a lot of subtle shadow detail, perfect blacks, everything right. And they all look very similar. I cannot say one is more crushed than the other. So in the fast-moving action scenes like this, the S90D looks pretty good, as well as the other two TVs. 3 TVs. It's a dark scene. Pause there. Now, arguably, in the back wall, the G3, a little bit darker. And I think this is going to be a problem in 1917. So I'm going to point out where the G3 is a touch darker. And I know I'm being nitpicky, but come on. You guys are spending good money, right? You guys want to know, oh, what am I missing out on, right? So right here on the G3, slightly darker than on the other 3. And this will become a problem in 1917. But there is a fix for that. If you have the G3, you're going to have to put on dynamic tone mapping in filmmaker mode, which will help. And on 1917, it's more obvious. We'll just go straight there. Okay, we're going to run it through without dynamic tone mapping so you can see on the G3. Even though it's supposed to be about, okay, I'll just stop right here. So as you can see, there's no detail on the G3, right? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, what happened here? So this is the complaint I had, and even though mine is calibrated, Sammy could not fix that, ultimately. And it's a panel lottery. I lost it. So where Classy lost the panel lottery on the S90D, where he got black crushing, I kind of lost it on the G3 for these scenes specifically, right? So let me do a quick fix so you guys can see what you could do to offset that. So here we go. Oop, wrong one. There we go. Okay. Let me turn on exposure. You can see the setting changes I'm going to make for you guys. Okay. All right, so filmmaker mode. We're going to go advanced settings. Brightness. So dynamic tone mapping on. And then I do expression enhancer on brightness. I mean, not accurate, but guess what? It brings some of that detail back, right? So now, with those improvements, let me turn up the exposure. Like, what? Everything's dark. What happened? Okay, there we go. Let's play this through. So it's a little bit better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than what it was before. So unfortunately, when you do that, though, everything's a little bit brighter. The specular highlights are a touch brighter on the G3, but at least you see the shadow detail. But look at the S90D, though. It is identical to the 95C, well, mine. So again, panel lottery being what it is. I did not realize it would be a panel lottery, but this is a tough scene, and the S90D, S is a match for the 95 and the 95L, right? I'll just pause right here. So, you know, the detail, everything, and the G3, once you put dynamic tone mapping on in filmmaker mode and then expression enhancer to bright, it's solid. But that's something that they don't tell you. So hopefully when you get, darn it, this is not Spears and Muscle. Look at this. I haven't got the wrong one up. Better late than never. There we go. HDR movies. I'm like, this is literally the last movie, right? Oh, the confusion. All right. All right, wait. Okay, I just can't wait. I just have to put this one up. Jesse, thank you for that comment. FOMO, using a fan to blow on the TVs. It gives the S95C and other TVs with inadequate cooling an unfair advantage. We need to see poorly designed TVs crash and black out. You mean ratings? That's what ratings is for, right? Because you guys are not watching 4 TVs at the same time, but excellent comment. I know what you're saying, but ultimately, when you have one TV, it's not going to be an issue. I have 4 TVs against the wall, and the last thing I want is to misrepresent what you would get. But you're right, you know, if you got 4 TVs, maybe you should get the G3 or G4 with a more effective heat sink, right? But actually, it's also for my comfort. I want to blow that hot air out and not have it just kind of sit here close to me. But, you know, that is a fair point taken. So I think we're going to run through this a little bit. So as you can see on the G3, because I have expression enhancer on bright, everything is a little bit brighter. But what's interesting is the Sony. Remember we talked about XR clear? So the Sony, this is where it's a touch brighter, right? So that the highlight on the Sony, because of XR clear, this is gradation preferred. This on the Sony is a touch brighter than on the other 2 TVs, and that's why people kind of like XR clear. They say, oh, look at that. I have a little bit of pop, that 3-dimensional thing. That's the XR clear that you cannot disable. So just something to think about. Not a big deal. It's not that big of a difference. Just something I had to point out. And then as that window gets brighter and brighter, there we go. Okay. Let me see what it looks like. Ah, they all look good. I thought I saw something, but I didn't see anything at all. Okay, so let's take out of this. I'll turn down exposure again. Ooh, so bright. Okay, questions. Let's take some of your questions. I think we've gone through everything that I wanted to go through. I want to hit what you guys might want to talk about, right? So if you want to see something, here's your chance to do it. We've only been on for, what, 90 minutes? So, we got time. We got time for you to let me know what you would like tested. And check your questions too. So let's start with the super chats, you patient people. Okay, thank you, Fern, for that super chat. Best soundbar for my Sony A95L, Sonos, Bose, etc. Should I wait for 2024? So, Fern, I can tell you this. Sony may be releasing new soundbars for 2024. I definitely would wait. There's no rush if you want the best for the money / best performance. If you need one right now, get the Samsung Q990C. Don't look back. For the price, if you go to samsung.com and you are a member, military, member of EDU, educator, student / first responder, AAA member, they're selling for like under $900. The Q990C, for that price, untouchable. If it's still available at Best Buy for under $1,000, untouchable. Now at $2,000, it's a bit too much. Wait for a Prime Day or Black Friday. And the 990D may be replacing it soon once they sell everything, but definitely under $1,000. 990C, phenomenal. Now the Sony HTA9, a bit expensive, A7000 plus surround, and the subwoofer ends up being more expensive than the 990C, even though the sound is identical. I've had both side by side testing, and really I can tune it to sound identical. Not a big deal. I actually prefer the 990, Samsung 990's subwoofer a bit more. It was not as loose, it was a bit tighter, so highly recommended. Sonos is expensive if you get the surround and multiple subwoofers or a single sub, but it's really if you're in the Sonos ecosystem. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for the music management software connecting to all your rooms. If you don't need any of that, you just want immersion, get the Samsung 990C. And this year they're going to have the 990D. Sound quality, if you watch my comparison, I put out a video comparing the 990C with the 990D. Get the 990C, it's a better deal. The 990D adds a better voice extraction, so dialogue can be raised, it'll be a little bit clearer. And they have a nighttime mode that's slightly better, and they have 4K 120 pass-through. That's really the big differences between the 990D and the 990C. And Bose, it's not any cheaper, so it's not a value brand, not even worth considering if you have available to you the Samsung 990. Or now the Sony, the HTA9, because it's wireless and you can put it anywhere, it has a flexible placement, is the studio's falling apart. I lost my train of thought now. The HTA9, I had it, I really like it, but if you want volume, the 990 and the A7000 are louder. But thank you for that, Fern. Okay, Yeti. Can you check the fall of Usher for Black Crush? Thanks. Fall of Usher. I can, and I will. I'll do that. I'll do that next, after I get the next super chat. But I think we've confirmed two things, and you will see. Black crushing will happen, and this is streaming content, but if it's HDR streaming, so let me take a step back. If you guys are watching streaming content and you have the option of enabling HDR and SDR, if you're watching an HDR stream and it's just too dark and you don't want to deal with settings like dynamic tone mapping, expression enhancer, go to SDR. There's no black crushing because SDR is slightly lifted across the board, and that's what I've done with streams that are too dark, like Game of Thrones or Fall of Usher. In HDR, if your TV is just, you lose the panel lottery, internal app you cannot convert to SDR, but externally, if you have a plug-in stick, Roku, Chromecast, Fire, move to SDR or disable HDR, and it should be brighter all around. And that would help any TV where crushing is an issue and you don't want to spend money for a calibrator, right? But so I will, I mean, I think it's safe to say that S90D is not going to have black crushing, just seeing everything else we've seen so far. But I will check separately, just in case, unless everyone's like, oh, House of Usher, please. Hey, thank you, Sha, you're still around. I was afraid you went to bed. You were absolutely right when you gave S90C the best TV, because if Sony and others are not giving much of a leap in quality and are much more expensive, and the results are clearly visible today, is S90D better than S90C? Well, after this, the answer is no. Different? Okay, so actually, the panel lottery appears to be worse this year. Last year, I did not get any complaints that the S90C was black crushing or any of those issues, right? This year, between Class C and a few owners, early owners of both the 95D and the 90D, oh, I seem to have black crushing. So maybe the panel lottery is a little bit worse this year than last year. I definitely recommend you get last year's S95C or 90C or 89C if you don't want anything special, because black crushing is very obvious, right? And more importantly, if you need anti-glare coating, then of course 95D. But if you don't care about that, I don't see a reason to get the 95D, because when we met with Samsung at CES, there was no mention that it was brighter. Samsung Display mentioned that it was brighter, right? Oh, the new third gen is 3000 nits. But Samsung Electronics had no mention of 3000 nits, which means this year they don't care. They're going to make sure all the TVs look the same. Brightness will be similar to last year, maybe slightly brighter, but it's not like, oh my gosh, it's like 50% brighter, right? Next year, probably. They'll probably unleash the TVs next year. So don't get an S95D looking for, oh, the big improvement in brightness. 95D because of the anti-glare coating. But if you don't care about that, definitely go and get the 90C or the 95C or the 89C. That's my conclusion right now, and I don't think it's too early to make that conclusion. And Christian, thank you for that super chat, my friend. What Genelec speakers do you have in your home theater? Subs? So I have the giant 15-inch. I mean, it's actually right there, right to the left of the S90D is my giant Genelec sub. And I have the ones. So on top, I have, let me see. Maybe you can see it if I turn up the exposure. All right. So on top, right there, see that? That's the smallest of the ones. And then to the left and right, I have the non-ones. I forget the numbers now, but I have a bunch of the big ones at, well, maybe it's easier if I just carry it and show you, right? These things are heavy, but here we go. Can you see it? I think this is like 30, 50 pounds. It's going to kill me. All right. So those are my front, center, left, right. That's just one of them. Oh, actually, terrible. Let me bring it back down. And the exposure is a little bit too bright. Actually, here, let me lower it so I just have to drag it into the floor so you can see it. So much easier. So I have 3 of these literally placed on the floor. So I have 3 of these on special stands on the floor, and like this in a circular array around me. And I matrix this one with the one above right here so that I get a phantom center between, because I needed a trim off to properly matrix it, right? So between the bottom and the one above, I matrix that, and you're making me work today. To my left, you see more Genelecs, right? Actually, you see even more Genelecs. If I go up here, right? There we go. Okay, there. So Genelecs up there, there. Now, obviously, I had to move it out of the front so you guys can see. So I have a 9 point, oh, actually, and that's my subwoofer right there, the Genelec sub, but that's only 1/3 of my sub. I have giant dual JTRs, dual 18-inch, 21-inch. I forgot how big they are. They're just huge, JTRs, and they're just way crazy. Let me take the exposure back down. There we go. I did not expect to get a workout answering your question. When I picked that up, I thought, wait, this is like 40 pounds. The heck? Thank you for the workout, Getty or Christian. Next time, I have to beware with those questions. Like, oh! Good thing I did deadlifts this morning, so I got my deadlifts going. Okay, Sean, thank you for the super chat. If panel lottery is bad this year, then the Q900D is going to be in my resume of returned 8K or not. So this is just qd-oled. The Q900D is their LCD TV, mini LED, 8K. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a panel lottery. I'm actually surprised that qd-oled's processing is a panel lottery. But then again, this is my theory. So tell me if you guys think this is valid. If they mixed Gen 2 and Gen 3 in the S90D, but they use the same software and the same calibrated, or not calibrated, but the same software optimized for one of the panels, wouldn't the other panel not look as good? So either they obviously optimized it for my panel, whether mine is second or third gen, I don't know. But if it's the same one for Classy's, then of course Classy will have a different image because he has a different panel technology. Now that's a theory, or it could be we have the same panel and they just did not do QC. So either they didn't do QC, or they did not optimize the software to be panel specific and they just shoot it out. So my hope is if they do a firmware update and it is an issue because it's a mix of second and third gen panels, then they only do the update for the panel that's not properly optimized and leave everyone else's panel alone. But I don't know if that will happen, assuming that's the reason. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but thanks for that, Sean. All right, let's see what other questions you guys got. There's a kick-ass system phone. We'll start for the workout. And this is why I told people, I have an amazing system, but when the Q990C comes that close, I mean, obviously, when I say close, it's satisfying, but I mean, if my system is like 100%, right? And then you have the 990C at 90%, like just the immersion, like, what am I doing here? Where did I go out and spend all this acoustic treatment and everything, right? Trinov and all of that. And at the end of the day, you know what? Maybe I should just go get myself some sound bars. And this is why I'm so happy to recommend sound bars. I think you guys are really close by getting this. Oh, and Christian, I do plan to bring sound bars to M-Wave so you guys can compare back to back, right? You go into one room and the rooms are like my room, right? They have full on Storm Audio, Anthem, all those great guys. They're going to have it calibrated. You're going to have a full 11.4.4 system. And after sitting in that room, you're going to go into my room with a flagship soundbar at 1/10 the price maybe, and then see, wait, this is 1/10 the price. That's pretty close, right? So yeah, if you guys don't already know, go to M-Wave to compare these type of systems. But definitely, I think we're there. All right. Let's see what you guys got here. Hey, thanks for the super chat, Mark. Mark Mancuso says, listen up, Audio Colorado Springs is demonstrating a 110-inch Sony LED by invitation. I have not heard of this one. 110-inch is news to me. Is it micro LED? So, and I'll tell you this right now. There is nothing holding me back from talking about a 110-inch had I known about it. So, Mark, you're breaking the news. This is the first I've heard of it. If it is a 2024 model, maybe you're under embargo and you should be talking about it because I am surprised. That would be wonderful if there's a 110-inch Sony anything, LCD TV, mini LED, because they're processing at 110-inch. I am looking forward to seeing that. So yeah, Mark, if you, by invitation only, if they invite you to buy it, share with us what the price is. I am dying to know. That's awesome. Thank you, Mark. And Jessica, thank you for the super chat. Will Sony have 8K TVs for this year to buy? So based on the rumors and speculations leading up to 2024, No. Based on what we've seen at CES, the 2024 prototype mini LED, all they talked about was 4K. And when we asked them about 8K, they were very purposefully silent about anything 8K and wanted to draw our attention to their pride and joy, which is a 4,000 nit prototype mini LED. So extrapolating from that, I don't believe there's an 8K TV this year. Now next year, maybe, or are they leaving 8K altogether? Quite possible, quite possible. But that's my speculation. So, oh, Sean, you should be in bed, my friend. Why panels are the last thing on every manufacturer's mind? Processors, brightness only matter, or maybe it's too tedious a job to look into each panel. Do all bad panels get replaced in America? Depends. Some companies will replace the entire TV. Samsung may try to replace the panel or fix the panel. LG should replace the entire TV. Sony probably would replace the entire TV, but it's definitely a panel lottery in terms of uniformity. And well, Sony A95L, sometimes it just doesn't turn on, right? That red flashing death, screen of death or light of death on the Sonys. I don't think it's a panel issue. I think it's just a electronics issue. But the reason why panel lotteries are what they are is because, let's say Samsung, they're not making their panels anymore. They're sourcing it from TCL, BOE, AUL, right? Each of these manufacturers will send them a bunch of panels. It's up to Samsung to discard the ones that don't work, or there is a tolerance. If they say, you know what, that's good enough, because they believe most consumers will not be running 15% screens. More importantly, in real content they won't notice, they'll let it through. And LCD panels from China is all over the place, obviously, because going for the budget value market. So to them, panel lottery is only bad if you notice you've lost the panel lottery. If you don't, hey, they win. Now, flagship, on the other hand, Sony has told us many times that they do a better job of rejecting bad panels, which is the Sony tax. You're paying for those rejects. So they buy a bunch of panels, right? If they reject more panels than they use, you're still paying for those panels. They may reject it. It doesn't mean that the supplier is giving them a refund. They may be giving them a partial refund, but the reality is you're still paying for those rejects, which is great because, on the other hand, oh, if you notice, the Sony, because it's a logo, it's dimming that logo pretty well, isn't it? Speaking of Sony, so that's why there's a panel lottery. Whether it's a Master Series or regular Sony, it's because they reject a few more panels. They call it binning than other makers, but that is why you're going to pay a little more. If they accepted every panel, you'll probably pay a little bit less. But these are all the things that go into these TVs. And it's good to see that Scott Coakley is very happy. All right, Scott. Let's see. Questions. FOMO, have you been briefed on the 2024 Sonys and mid-April when the embargo is lifted, correct? Desert, if there is an embargo, I cannot even comment on your comment. And so all I have to do is not comment on your comment. And you would know everything you need to know, I guess. Hey, Michael, how big of a difference between the 990C and 930C soundbars? The biggest difference is power, size, the loudness of the surround on the 990C will be louder. Just everything will be a little bit louder. So if you're in a small room and the 930C comes with the surrounds and the subwoofer, it'll be okay, but the sub will not be as impactful as the 990C. The 990C has a slightly larger sub. For these cheaper soundbars, that makes all the difference in the world, honestly, because every dollar counts, and because it's a value product. And so the first to get hit with the value issue is always a subwoofer, because it's very expensive to have the power, the drivers, just everything in that subwoofer working. And the 990C has that perfect balance of value. To get any less expensive, you're really paying for it in the subwoofer. So that's where they save the money. I recommend that if it's only $100 difference, save up. Now, if it's at half the price, 930C all the way. The 990C isn't twice the quality, but it's subtle enough that I would go with the 990C because the subwoofer does hit deeper, and the surround hits louder. And to me, in a slightly larger room, that makes all the difference. So hopefully that was helpful. And if I missed your question, just ask it again. I'm just kind of jumping all over here. John, so with all this testing, which TV is, this is just too dark. Like I have my tiny head, and this is just too much. So I'm going to turn up the exposure just a bit here. Actually, let me put it on something that's a bit better than this. I'll put it on Spears and Munsell. I apologize, because this Kaleidoscape logo it's a bit much, and it doesn't help you guys. There we go. So we'll pay some Spears and Munsell while I answer your question, and we'll put it at, let's see, whoops. We'll put it at 1,000 nit content. Actually, something interesting. The HDR analyzer. You guys haven't seen that yet, so we'll put that through. There we go. Okay. All right, back to your question. John, so with all this testing, which TV is the best for watching movies in your opinion? They all are. Now, out of the box. So once calibrated, if you notice, they all look nearly identical. I feel like the Samsung gave me more accuracy, if that's important to you. But the Sony is more satisfying because I do like the XR clear. Now, I didn't do low bitrate testing just because I didn't have it set up. I really need to find the right low bitrate content where the Sony shines, like YouTube TV. Now, I have YouTube, but I didn't get my YouTube TV set up for the right motion content. But ultimately, the Sony A95L is what I would get for myself because I do like what XR Clear does. However, I'm very particular. If it was for my parents, S89C, S90C all day long. And S90D, wait for it to drop in price. S95C, slightly better, but for value, S90C, S89C. In this case right here, I like the size of the 77-inch S95C. So size trumps all. If anything, the price of the S95C is like 77-inch over $3,000. Get the 83-inch S90C for $2,500, $2,600 at samsung.com if you're an offer member, because the size impact, I think, really has an effect on your viewing pleasure. The subtle differences between these TVs at the same size, it doesn't move the needle enough. I mean, you guys saw it, right? I mean, they're so similar. Even the G3, when we looked at the Mad Max scenes where OLED slightly unsaturated in the brightest action scenes, I wouldn't choose a TV based on that. But sports content, the G3 was clearly slightly brighter than the rest, but not so bright that, hey, let's get the G3. So at the end of the day, buy based on quality of life. Do you like Google TV? Do you like Tizen? Like if you notice when I changed the settings, on the Tizen, boom, boom, my settings were done. Sony and LG, that wand, man, that remote, you got to go through the process. It's not quick, right? You got to enjoy putting that remote around. And on the Sony, it's Google TV. You either like it or you don't. So, or the audio. I can tell you right now, we're not testing audio today, but the A95L has the best audio of this entire group. Doesn't say much. It's just TV audio. But if you don't plan to buy a soundbar, A95L has the best audio of all four of them. The worst audio is the G3, just very anemic. And 95C is fine, not loud enough for a 77-inch TV. And I haven't even tested the audio on the 90D, but I know you guys don't buy TVs based on audio, but it's quality of life. So overall, I would choose the A95L for those things. Although Google TV does annoy me slightly, it's not a big deal. I can navigate it fine enough. So now, if you guys are wondering what this all is in terms of what are you looking at? What are the meters? So I want to show you before I jump into the next question, just in case you're wondering, and you plan to get the Spears and Munsell disc. This is how bright the scene is, right? And it matches the scene here. So let's say this here, little bright specular highlights, matches this, right? So this is an exact match. If you overlay it over this scene, you're seeing the brightness of parts of the scene or whatnot, right? But you don't know where it is in the scene. So right here, the brightest part of the scene is like right here. So it tells you which part of the scene has a brightness. I mean, it's not a perfect match, but you'll see it. And then here it tells you what the maximum nits is. So in this scene, the brightest part of the scene is, say, 1600 nits, right? Because I remember I limited it to 2000 nits. So this scene, 1600 nits. And this is the color space is inside 709. There's nothing here that goes into P3 or even 2020. And what else? Oh, and normally if it goes out of P3 2020, you'll see it here somewhere. So once we see some specular highlights, I'll be able to jump in there and match it so you guys can see what you're looking at. But hopefully that helps. And this is a super bright scene. So every now and then I'll have to adjust exposure for you. There we go. Okay, next question. And Christian, thank you for the super chat. Here, I'll move the chats over here so it's easier for me to read. Is $2,000 for an open box 77-inch S95C in fair condition a good deal? No. I do not like the word fair condition. There's just too much flexibility for things to go wrong. $2,000 is a lot of money. I would rather you pay $1,900 for a 77-inch S89C unless you really need the One Connect box. The 77-inch S89C is indistinguishable in terms of image quality from the S95C and the S90C as well, right? At 77 inches, all three TVs image quality, identical. So that $2,000 is not a good deal for the 95C, considering brand new, the 89C exists at $1,900. I think right now it's still $2,000. Also, what does fair mean in Best Buy open box terminology? That's the problem. So if you have like, excellent, good, when you go down to fair, you have to start taking things out. Missing items, missing, I don't know, the remote control, maybe there are scratches. I would be hesitant to get it at good condition. I would not touch it at fair condition. I'll just leave it at that. Too much flexibility for things to be thrown under the, to the wayside as far as the details, right? What's really missing? Can't touch it. It seems the companies are working, thank you Sean for the super chat, it seems the companies are working together and concentrating on LCDs this year after last year's qd-OLED's push, and maybe next year the qd-OLEDs will get a big leap. Time to sleep. So if you haven't gone to sleep yet, I will answer this question, then you go to sleep. But thank you for the super chat, my friend. They're working on LCDs this year after last year's qd-OLED push. So LCDs are the biggest money maker for them in terms of per unit margin. When they saw that the Chinese companies, Hisense and TCL, had this unbelievable, like, oh my gosh, how many did they sell? 98 to 100 inch. They're like, LCDs are still alive as long as we can make it affordable and large enough. So if an LCD TV is a value, like the U8K last year, or the QM8 or the Q7, where for under 1,000, you get this amazing image quality. Not quite OLED, but it's under 1,000. The big companies are like, okay, we have to revisit our LCD strategy and maybe give larger TVs the value. Secondly, the technology push is coming from the Chinese side as far as the suppliers, that mini LED, the additional dimming zones. On the Chinese side, they're providing you with this hardware. And if you have a strong software side, processing side like Sony, you're like, wait, let me take advantage of what's available and really tune it to its upteenth, to the very final end. How good can it get? Because selling an LCD TV is more profitable than an OLED TV, because OLED TVs are so expensive, and then you add the margins, the volume is very low. If you can get LCD TV level volumes, you make it up in volume, right? So slightly lower margins to keep the price competitive, but you're selling a whole lot more. So I think they're discovering that, and they're doing whatever it takes to stay alive. Good night, Sean. Thank you for that. And SD has a balanced take on open box. I see, man, my open box 65-inch A95L survived, and both my new ones died. So there you have it, right? Even new ones died. That is a good counterpoint. You never know what you're gonna get. Yeah, see, so they turn the TV on, it turns on, open box. The question is, how do they separate fair, good, excellent condition, right? I mean, did they just slap fair on everything? Which is actually better than slapping excellent condition or good condition on everything, right? I think the thing is there a difference between fair and excellent and good? I wouldn't trust them. All right, here we go. High def. Stop the FOMO. Mind testing the low color desaturation on the S90D. Maybe the arrival or the illusionist scene. I do have the illusionist scene. So let me run that. That is a good question. Let's see. So if you guys aren't familiar, so the illusionist in this one scene, in the illusionist, the dress is red, but it's low luminance red. It's SDR. And actually on the Sony, there's not a lot of red. It actually looks like dark gray. Whereas on the G3 and on the Samsung, the red is there. So we're going to see if Sony fixed that on the A95L. This was an issue on the A95K. And I have forgotten if the A95L actually did look a little bit better. But let's see if the S90D has this problem. So we'll try it right now. Okay. All right, the illusionist. So if you guys were wondering, this is why I have Kaleidoscape. It's just a lot quicker. I know it's expensive. I'm not telling you guys to get it, but for a TV reviewer, I tell you, it's so much easier. Here we go. Play scene. The cloak. See, this is what I'm talking about. Isn't this great? The cloak. It goes exactly into the scene I want. Let me just pause right here real quick. Oh, wrong one. I'm going to pause. I'm going to make sure I check. Now remember, I'm not big on SDR settings, so it's whatever default is. Here we go. And we're almost there. There we go. Let's just stop right here. Actually, a little bit further. Okay, there we go. Stop right here. Okay. Now, let's compare the red desaturation. But before we do that, let's make sure I have the right settings on. So let's go down a little bit. So on the Sony, professional mode. Yep. And it is SDR, so let me take brightness, peak luminance, I think off, right? Right? Isn't SDR peak luminance got to be off? And same LG. Oh, vivid, no wonder. It's like, oh my God. Filmmaker mode. Peak brightness also off. And then dynamic contrast is off. Okay. And let's see. Samsung. Filmmaker mode. Peak brightness off. S95C. Peak brightness also off. Okay, let's turn up the exposure. Oop, wrong way. There we go. Boom. Okay, let's see what we got here. It looks like the red desaturation on the A95L is slightly worse. So it may be better than the A95K, but the G3, the 95C, the 90D nails it. And in SDR, we're not talking BT 2020. This is just, everything is within the color space, Rec 709. And so it's just basic red, nothing special. If you notice, and I'll point it out, what I'm looking at so you guys can see. So the edge of this cloak right here, right? This is dark gray. I'm seeing dark gray. On the LG, red throughout, dark light red, but you see red. It fills it up. On the Samsung, similarly, you see red, and the 90D, you see red. Whereas here, it's mostly dark gray with very little red. That's a desaturation of the red. So the A95L, not necessarily fixed to the same degree as, well, maybe slightly better than the A95K. Not by much, but for sure, this is an issue that Sony needs to address, and we're going to have this scene at the shootout so that we wake Sony up to this issue if they don't address it this year, right? Oops, let me take this SDR setting off the Sony real quick. There we go. Okay, any follow-up questions? I know this is not a Sony review, but the 90D, very well done, 90D. No obvious issues. Okay, got some super chats here. Brandon, thank you for that. Z9K, do it have dedicated Blu-ray player for it? No, there is no dedicated Blu-ray, no 8K Blu-ray. There is no such thing. I use the Panasonic UB820. Get it, it's phenomenal. Z9K, it's 8K, but it's upscaling 4K. So it gets a 4K content, upscales it. Essentially, you're not watching native 8K, and there's no real native 8K content. So get it because it's bright. The Z9K is one of the brightest TVs you can get. It's okay, it's not bad, it's a pretty good TV. But for that price, I would rather get what will come this year. Well, you already have it, so it's too late for you. But for those of you considering the Z9K, I would rather you get the upcoming mini LED prototype Sony flagship in 2024. Phenomenal, probably similar price to the Z9K. It will be much better processing. Or even last year's X95L, I would recommend over the Z9K. The Z9K isn't a bad TV, but it's don't get it because of 8K. Right? Get it because you need that brightness. Its processing is fine. But if you don't need the brightness, get the X95L or even the X95K 85-inch. Thank you for the super chat. So, let me let this scene move on for you guys to see real quick, in case you're wondering what happens next. And most of you will not notice this issue, so I want to emphasize that you wouldn't know it's desaturated red unless you have the TVs next to it. So I don't want to overplay this issue, right? But for purposes of a shootout and being the best of the best, the Sony falls short here with its red desaturation. But that's what people are talking about when you hear red desaturation. So there you have it. So yes, thank you for that suggestion, High Def. Hopefully that answers your question. Ooh, that is torch. Let me take that exposure back down. Here we go. Okay, what we got here? We are now at 2 hours. If there are no more questions, we'll take the last few questions. And hey, if you guys enjoyed this stream, please click like, and otherwise click like 3 times if you really like it. Thank you very much. And if I missed your question, ask again. The G3 really is an SDR beast. It's even bright without peak luminance. Remember, it has to be accurate. So SDR shouldn't be bright. This should all be the same brightness. And again, I did not have it calibrated to the right brightness. They're all at max brightness. Technically, they should be at, 45 here, 50 there. There is a specific 100 nit brightness point they need to be at. But yes, it is an SDR beast for sports. It gets super bright. But yeah, just a reminder, if you're watching content, you don't want it to be super bright in SDR. It's got to be perfectly dim. That's why I don't like SDR. Sometimes it's too dim. Once calibrated properly, because 100 nits is too dim for me. Yes, SD, it is an overblown issue. How often do you see that scene, right? Not very often. So, but it's just worth mentioning. But you're right. I mean, it's like you guys saw me, right? I chose the A95L. It's not a big deal to me. I recognize that's there, but nope, not a big deal. Nobody talks about desaturated bright colors in WOLED. Oh, I talk about it all the time, but same thing. What content do you see that often in? But yeah, Spears of Muscle, you guys saw in Mad Max where it desaturates. WOLED's weakness is so to be fair, the Sony, among qd-oled, the Sony is the only one with the desaturated red issue. Samsung does not. However, all qd-oled will beat WOLED in terms of luminance color saturation. Now, the G4 claims to have fixed that. We will see if it can reintroduce that brightness, high luminance color. But as far as I know currently, very desaturated at high luminances, especially in the blues and the yellows. G3 is nice, definitely. Okay, here's a good question. I'm currently a AAA member, but my discount doesn't work when I enter my information. Okay, Derek, so what you have to do, I'm going to walk you through this, and all of you who are AAA members, because I do it and I get the discount, what you have to do is go to the shop for offer members, click on EDU. I know you're not EDU, but you got to click on EDU, and it says enter your information. So, you register with Samsung, your information, blah, blah, blah. You click on EDU, you log in as EDU, and it says not a member. I got it. Now, while you are there, even though it says not a member, you click on the AAA link, you log in as AAA, then you refresh the EDU side, do it a couple times back and forth, then you will see the right price, then add it to cart, and you take it from there. But you have to log in as EDU first so that you're in there, even though, quote unquote, you're not a member of EDU, blah, 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 doesn't matter. Go to AAA, validate as AAA, refresh, it should get that price. That's what I do. That's how I access those prices to show you guys. And then you could add it to the cart and you could take it from there. So, I mean, it's a workaround. I don't know why Samsung makes it so hard for AAA members. Do it, Derek, and let me know if that works out for you. Okay, I think we're all good to go with the S90D. So let me have some closing thoughts here. I'm going to make myself look very big. I'll put myself over the S90C. Okay, so here are my closing thoughts. Real quick. You like that? That change in perspective? Okay. S90D, closing thoughts. After seeing everything, clearly it is not a step above the S90C at all. If anything, with the panel lottery appearing to be an issue in 2024, the S90D may end up being a worse TV because you don't know what you're going to get. Now, I won the panel lottery, as you saw. It was pretty good, but at best, it matches the S90C. It wasn't brighter than the S95C. And even though it's 77 inches, we're looking at the overall panel brightness, it's definitely not as bright as the 95C, which means that it's very similar to the S90C, because the S90C last year was similarly not as bright as the 95C. It may be slightly brighter than the 90C, but not brighter than the 95C. So if you're looking at the S90D, don't. Get the S90C. Now, if you like the new UI, right, then hey, there's a reason to get the S90D, but I don't think that's a very good reason. As far as processing and everything, it looks very similar to the 95C, which is identical image processing to the 89C and the 90C. So again, you see the theme here. If the 89C or the 90C is available to you, get that. This is $1,000 more right now. Makes no sense to me. At 65 inches, the 90C is like $1,600 at Best Buy. The 95C is $2,600. Oh, $100 off, right? It's at $2,500. So $1,000 more. It blows my mind. Now, by Black Friday, I'm hoping it drops to $1,500, $1,600. But the fact that there's a panel lottery at all for the 90D, no go. I don't want you guys to take that risk. Now, should you get the 90D or the G3? Now, the G3 is a tier higher. It's got a 5-year panel warranty. It's got a lot of things going for it. It's brighter. It's brighter than the 95C in HDR sports content, right? So I like the G3 a lot. It's built to last. So if you don't really care about that subtlety, the difference between WOLED and qd-oled, then you have the 5-year panel warranty on the G3, although the audio does kind of suck. The A95L is a bit more expensive than all of them. We're not going to see any discounts. If you know Sony, you like Sony, out of the box, it's pretty good. This A95L was not calibrated. With a little tweaking, it looks just as good as the G3, fully calibrated. And you saw my 90D, so close to the 95C, fully calibrated, but that's panel lottery. I got lucky. I mean, I got a TV that looks like, wow, looks, it's near accurate out of the box, and I got it at Best Buy, so it wasn't Samsung touching it up before they sent it to me, right? But I will be getting a 95D from Samsung. So, but Samsung doesn't make it a practice to calibrate anything. They just give me what they give me. Like last time I got the 90B from Samsung, and it broke during this stream. Like, what? This dimming zone thing is like, it crashed. It just ruined. And so they had to send me a new one. So yeah, believe me when I say they don't check their TVs before sending it to reviewers. You get what you get. So I'm not afraid that I'll be getting a golden sample at all. But I will be getting the 95D to test its anti-reflective layer. For sure, that's what it's about. But we'll also test image quality. So as soon as the 95D comes, I will uninstall, demount the Sony 7-inch S95C, put the S95D up above the S90D, and then as more 2024 TVs come into play, we'll start replacing it like the G3. Once I get the G4, that will take the place of the G3. You guys all know how good the G3 is. Great. But can the G4 brightness, is that worthwhile, right? And the Sony, because they carry over the A95L for 2024, it stays as the Sony OLED representative for 2024 as their flagship representative. So yeah, and then we'll get the mini LED from Sony at some point. And as far as other mini LEDs I'm getting this year, definitely Hisense and TCL flagships. We're going to get that to test against the Sony flagship. How far has everyone come, right? But as far as a closing thought, I cannot recommend the 90D over last year's 89C or 90C. It just doesn't make it, even if it was the same price, I'd still get the 89C, 90C, given the possibility that you might lose the panel lottery. Whereas last year, the only people that lost the panel lottery were bent panels. But then you see it out of the box. Boom, oh, it's bent. It goes back. But with black crushing, you may not notice until you get to the wrong content. And suddenly, oh my God, I'm out of the return period. And I don't know if it's a warranty claim, right? So yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'll take a few last questions before we close out for the day. But you guys have been great and patient. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, 366. Come on, guys. Click like. There's only 265 likes. You got to give me something for spending your Sunday with me. I am here for you. Okay, so let me see if you have any interesting questions before I go. Otherwise, we're going to close out in the next few minutes. You're welcome, Asaf. How come the Sony dims quickly in the other three? It's because Sony has a very sensitive logo detector. It can tell it's a logo. It's a static image, right? If it sees a static image, it will dim. But if I choose a random movie, good question. So I want to show you that once you put a movie on, boom, it's right back up. But you know, it's protecting itself, and I love that. That's fine. It can tell that it's a static image. That's all. So let's just choose. Let's say Ford versus Ferrari, right? oh, look at that, it's brighter all of a sudden. See, now that I've moved things around, boom, it's brighter. So not a big deal, because it should dim if it accurately detects static images. So it's doing its job. And great review. Why, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it. Hopefully this gives you your kickoff to the 2024 review season. Now, I have to remind people that just joined us, I don't want my S90D to be representative of every out-of-the-box S90D. I definitely got lucky if indeed, Classy got terrible black crushing, as many of you may. It's a panel lottery. So if you're within the return period, test for black crushing and then just exchange it. And after a couple of exchanges, if you keep having the same issue, just get last year's TV. But you should get last year's TV as a start, by the way, if it's still available. I heard that the 55-inch S90C at Best Buy is already sold out. So upgrade to the 65 or the 77-inch S89C. Or go to Costco. Is there a secret Samsung TV coming out? Yes, there is definitely a secret Samsung TV coming out that was not mentioned at CES. And I only know because if you know, you know. And I'm very excited about this TV, but I can't talk about it. So as soon as I can, the details are fuzzy. It's that good, right? But I'm excited to see it. And I've seen it compared to similar TVs, and it's good. I don't know the price though. So if its price is too high, then maybe it's not so good. But I'm excited by this TV. But I can't tell you more than that. So yes, there is a Samsung TV that has yet to be covered by any reviewer, any publication, and we're all under embargo not to talk about it until the time is right. All right, SF, X95L or A95L for moderately lit room. X95L for a moderately lit room. Mostly because it's just that extra impact. It's 85 inches, A95L does not come in an 83-inch. So you have an 85-inch X95L against a 77-inch. Between size and punch and good enough, I would go with the 85-inch size. But the A95L isn't terrible, but when I hear moderately lit room, I do like the X95L a lot. I saw that at the Showdown last year, just with all the OLEDs. It still stood out to me, so yeah. We need more tests of everyman TVs. Please get the 150,000 micro LED TV. What kind of everyman are you? Everyman from Monaco. So I may have access to a micro LED TV. It just depends if Cosmo is available. So, Cosmo, if you're here, thank you. You have a micro LED TV. So at some point, we'll check out his TV. Personally, I have no plans of getting, or rather, I don't believe Sony or Samsung are sending out micro LED TVs to test. So I can't review it. And that's, it's not so good that it's worth getting one. And it's 100 inches. It's so hard to make it a reference TV because it's so large. Honestly, if there was a 4K micro LED at 77-inch, I would be tempted, but it's not possible. The pixel pitch is too small. It's just cannot even exist in that size. I think Samsung might have a prototype, but we're talking over 100,000 for 77-inch. It's like, I don't know. And not only that, I would have to use MadVR to fully get image processing going. Because on a micro LED, their native processor, no bueno, you're gonna have to, so it's another 15, 16,000 for MadVR connected to a micro LED TV. And Bush is asking, is it an OLED TV? This secret Samsung? Bush, I can't answer anything, man. You get me in trouble. Nope. I want to tell you more, but I can't. But you know what? It's not far away. So at some point, I will be able to share with you. Okay. How do you feel about Dolby Vision versus HDR10 Plus? It doesn't matter. HDR versus 10 Plus versus non-Dolby Vision, it does not matter. They all look the same. If properly set, calibrated, identical, right? So Dolby Vision at best, slightly different color, slightly different shadow detail, but you're stopping the frame and you're looking. But when they're run as the creator intended, that same scene in HDR10 or Dolby Vision, more often than not, Dolby Vision is slightly dimmer. much to my disappointment. But when done right by the color grader and you're having the right everything in place, it looks just like HDR10. 10 plus indistinguishable from 10, so I'm not even going to separate 10 plus. Not a big deal at all. So in my opinion, this should never be the reason to get any of these TVs. Dolby Vision 10 plus. As long as you have HDR capability, you're solid. Choose the TV with quality of life features that you want. Do not worry about Dolby Vision. I don't like that Dolby Vision results in the TV maker spending time, resources, and money to fix it. That makes the TV more expensive for no reason other than to make it as good as HDR10. So, see ya. Get the 89C and enjoy it. Do not worry about Dolby Vision. Okay. And this is a great question to end the stream, so I'll answer this question last. Kasra, thank you. Thanks, FOMO. Can you summarize in what ways you think the S90D is improved versus the S90C? Torn between the S90D and the 85C. So, I did not test this, but the S90D has this, well, let me see. So I'm just showing you the settings, right? So we'll just end with this. If you go to the settings, both in filmmaker mode, oops, there you go. Okay, and the S90D has this color booster, whereas last year's TV did not have a color booster. The question is, does color booster do anything? And, well, let's see. I mean, maybe it does some magic. I bet you it's very similar to Live Color by Sony. So let's put it on high, low, off. Let me put it on the tiles where there is a variety of color. So let's see what it does. So color booster, if that's a reason to pay an extra $1,000, but you know what? You never know. All right, so let's find something bright and colorful. There we go. All right, let's see what color booster does. So color booster is off on the S90D. Oop, wrong remote. Like, what's happening? Okay, get exposure right. Color booster, low, high. It seems to make it doesn't do much. It doesn't do anything. Okay, so color booster, color booster, definitely not a reason to get the S90D for the color booster. So I have color booster on high now. I have to remember to take this off later. And it looks, let me move my head over here real quick. Didn't do anything. So definitely not a reason to get the S90D. So I gave the S90D a chance, a reason for you to buy it. And now, I didn't test upscaling of low bitrate content. That was something that both the 95C and the 90C a touch behind the other major brands, LG and Sony. So maybe the 90D would be better there. That's not something we tested today. So as far as just overall image quality, unrelated to upscaling of low bitrate content, and even then, you guys saw the YouTube Sports, it looked identical to their TVs. It wasn't any better than the 95C for sure. So I have to say that the 90C, get it over the 90D. Now, the S85C. So this is another thing. S85C was not launched this past week. There is a question as to whether it will be launched at all. I mean, will there be an 85C in the USA? There's no confirmation from Samsung, because when we saw the 85C at CES, they were very clear that nothing is written in stone. This is something for you guys to see what we have. They wouldn't even confirm the name of the models, right? We were the ones that called it the 90C. He goes, well, if this was to be launched, it would be the 85C, but we can't confirm whether or not. And so the 85C may or may not be launched. If it is, it would be WOLED. And the WOLED S85C will not be as bright as the 90D or the 90C. So the S85C will be a step down if it doesn't have MLA. If it does have MLA, it'll be very similar to the G3, right? A little bit brighter. So I don't think it will, because it makes no sense to give it MLA. It would not cover the value OLED. If there is an S85C, it would definitely be less bright than the S90D. What you need to do is get the S90C if you're buying a TV right now. Don't overpay. But if you wait until Black Friday, the 90C will be gone. So for those who are waiting for Black Friday to get the 90D, you'll be very disappointed to get the 90C now and enjoy that TV for the rest of the year and laugh at everyone who waited to get the 90D. So someone, was it Cass, right? Steve Cass. Is this going to be another hype video? It's definitely not hype. I mean, I'm hyping the 89C and 90C right now. I really think those are phenomenal, given what we saw here. So yes, thank you, Castro, for that. And guys, thank you for sharing Sunday with me. I'm gonna try to timestamp everything. That's sports with the logo dimming on, though. I'm gonna have to remember sports comparison with logo dimming on, with logo dimming off. But other than that hiccup, this was a wonderful review, guys. I think I discovered a lot about the 90D. Together, we discovered much. Thank you so much, everyone, SD and Classy, who helped me through the various patterns to check out the black crushing. So it's definitely a panel lottery. I didn't have black crushing that Classy did, as you guys saw. So if you get the TV, that's the risk that you might face. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and post it in the comments below, and I'll make sure to address it in my 90D review. Now, this is a keeper for me. Now I wonder if I should keep this. I have to keep it, right? Because I won the panel lottery. But it irks me that the 95C is brighter. Should I exchange it for the 95D? I mean, I want to keep a Samsung 2024 TV. I do. But the 90D, it's not at 65 inches. I'm going to have to swap it for, now I'm thinking aloud. I think I'm going to have to swap it for the 95D now. Because the 95D at least is brighter, and we know for sure. So I don't know. Before I go, what do you guys think? Should I just go back to Best Buy and swap it? Even though I won the panel lottery. Maybe I should tell them, guys, this is the panel lottery. Put a sticker say FOMO on it, and I should write that on the box for you guys, right? If you guys find an open box that says FOMO on it, get it. That's the one. Actually, I should do that. Then you guys win the panel lottery. You guys be looking through these California open boxes. This is the one. I got the FOMO. So let's do that. Exchange it for the S95D. That is the comparison you want to see. Yeah, because honestly, this was going to be my keeper TV because I was so impressed by the 90C last year. But that's because my 90C was 77 inches, or the 90C I had for review was 77 inches, and it exactly matched my 95C at 77. And it turned out that all the 77 inches were a match for the 77-inch 95C. The smaller sizes were a little bit dimmer by maybe 10-15%, but I was hoping the 90D would make up that difference. It did not. It actually is very similar to last year's 90C at the 65-inch size. It's quite a disappointment. So, think about this. But yeah, you're not convincing me now. Yeah. I think so too. Keep it for now. Swap the S95D during the return window. I mean, I literally picked it up within the last 2 days. So, food for thought. Yeah, put a little sticker on it, right? A little FOMO sticker, a little FOMO tab. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up right now. Comment below. What do you think I should do? Until next time, my friends, stop the FOMO.